Hello everyone, Pryon here, and a little bit of an introduction just about me if you've never seen my videos before. I am a competitive Dead by Daylight caster. I have about 3,500 hours in the game, and I'm pretty invested in being better at the game and understanding why it works and why things are the way they are in Dead by Daylight. So with that out of the way, let me get into the video here. We're going to be talking about today why everyone hates the ghoul. KANEKI Ken, DBD's Tokyo Ghoul chapter. Added KANEKI Ken and Orize Kamishiro to the game, and let's just say it has not gotten any less controversial with time. Initially, it was pretty clear that the ghoul was an incredibly strong killer. In fact, I would say the strongest release that we've had since Dracula, landing him squarely in the top 5, or at least the top 6 of most people's tier lists, which is quite a feat. A while ago, I made this tweet. I was thinking that the hate would fade around when the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter came out, but I guess I was wrong. So I'm turning the tweet into a full video, because the KANEKI hate on my Twitter feed is starting to get crazy, and not just on my Twitter feed, in-game. So, without further ado, let's get into this script I've written. Strong killers in Dead by Daylight are often met with much frustration from the survivor side. What exactly that frustration is changes based on the killer in general, but it is possible to have a strong killer who is generally balanced and generally loved by the community. The Hillbilly is a pretty good example of this. As it is now, I would place the Ghoul at number 6 on my personal tier list. That makes him an S- tier killer, below the Spirit and above the Singularity. The level of hate in the community for the Ghoul has risen to unprecedented levels. Despite Dracula being objectively stronger than KANEKI, we don't see nearly as much hate for the Dark Lord these days. This is what I intend to go over in this video. Why does everybody hate the Ghoul so much? What causes survivors to hate a killer in general? Why are people eating a disconnect penalty rather than face a killer who technically still has to down you with a basic attack? So to illustrate this, we need to set the stage a little bit. We're not going to talk specifically about the Ghoul yet, but instead I need to go over what I think are the general principles of an enjoyable survivor experience in Dead by Daylight. I have 3 points here. Survivors generally enjoy facing killers that aren't very strong. That's number 1. It should go without saying that survivors have more fun when they are escaping from the match. When they are playing against killers that aren't as strong, they have a much higher chance of escaping. Think your trappers, your pigs, your doctors. These are the types of killers who often result in those horror movie-esque chases that just go on, and oh, he was so close to hitting me, but I spun him and stunned him with the pallet, and stuff like that. Survivors, in general, they enjoy facing killers that just aren't very strong. Number 2, survivors like it when their choices in a chase actually matter. You choose to take the pallet instead of the window, that results in you extending your chase and surviving longer. Let's say against the Death Slinger. You chose to put something between yourself and the killer, and that meant that his gunshot missed you just barely. Survivors like that. It's fun. It's positive feedback that they get, and their chase is increased and they do better in the game. Survivors also like it when they have a last-ditch effort to dodge something in a chase. Think stuff like Wesker or Hillbilly here. Against these killers, they're using their power. You're out in the open. You don't have a pallet. You're not going to make it to that window. You still have a last-ditch effort to do something here. You can do what's called a flare. You can fly out to the left or right, try to confuse the killer, and make them miss. Same thing with ranged killers like Huntress. This is why people generally like playing against Huntress more than they like playing against Trickster. Because what is a minute dodge going to do against the Trickster? He's still throwing knives. But against Huntress, that could be the difference between you making a pallet and not. So in general, survivors really like it when they still have a chance to dodge something, even if they're like out of resources and out of position. Okay, you got all that? let's go on to what survivors don't like now, in general. Remember, we're still not talking about the ghoul yet. Survivors really don't like it when they can't figure out why they got hit. This is why you see hate posts about the Huntress's hatchet hitboxes that extend out behind a survivor's back. This is why you see angry posts about, like, artist birds hitting people from below where they should, or nurse blinking directly onto your head with nowhere to hide. Survivors, they really don't like it when they get hit and they don't know why. Survivors also don't like it when obscure techs are used that they didn't know about and they result in a hit. Think Blight and Wesker's hug techs here. You see somebody post a really cool hug tech clip on like Dead by Daylight or Reddit, the comments are brutal. Survivors really, really hate it when somebody did something that like doesn't seem intended and might seem like an exploit, even if it's very difficult and rewarding to pull off. It does not feel good for the survivors to get hit by something that they don't understand. Number 3, survivors really, really hate it when their choices in chase feel inconsequential. Think back to Skull Merchant 2.0 here. When you're chasing with Skull Merchant 2.0 with the 2 beams and the hindered and the haste, you drop a filler pallet and she just sits there and places a drone. And you're like, well, nothing I can do now. She is just going to stand there until I eventually get scanned, and then I'm going to have a claw trap and I'm going to be negative 10% speed and she's going to be plus 10% speed. It does not matter where I go here. I might as well go off to the corner so that she takes longer to get to a hook. Things like old Chucky. I have a pallet, I drop it, does not matter because he just presses a button to scamper it and hit me anyways. Survivors really hate it when their choices in chase feel inconsequential, like they would have died anyways. And that sort of segues into the last one, that survivors also don't like it when their use of a resource is negated. So when survivors get to a pallet or window, they want to feel safe. If they aren't safe on those pallets or windows, creates a negative interaction and makes them more likely to dislike that killer. Think something like Pyramid Head. A lot of survivors don't like Pyramid Head because he just puts his sword down at the window or the pallet and then they feel like they have no options. They still do, but that's not what this video is about. So let's review here. Survivors don't like it when they can't figure out why they got hit, when there are obscure techs at play that they don't understand and it results in a hit. They don't like it when their choices in chase feel inconsequential, like they would have died regardless of what they did. That is the big one here. So, now let's go back to the ghoul. The ghoul is already checking a few boxes on the second set of conditions here, unfortunately. His first Kagune grab hit is very easy to land, and it contains an auto-aim mechanic that feels and looks like it hits around terrain. Now this was even worse before they reduced the auto-aim in a later hotfix, but it's still relatively bad right now. You can still hit people with the ghoul's grab from like around terrain, and I'm of the opinion that this is a necessary evil. I think the killer would feel horrible if survivors could just duck behind a small rock and it would just completely negate the grab. It also has to do with, I think, the way that they made the slide base kit from PTB to live, and they kind of didn't account for, I guess, the grab animation in that, because there are a lot of ways that you can make the ghoul's hitboxes look really stupid. And I think it has to do with the slide. But anyways, moving on. The first Kagune grab hit is a lot of times a hit that a survivor will never understand why it's happening. Especially people who don't play killer. They don't see what it looks like on the killer's screen. All they see is that they were behind the wall and they still got hit by the red tentacle. It will make them feel like their positioning didn't matter. And this interaction is a horrible first impression for a killer. Getting hit around a solid wall with a auto-aim grab irreparably damages the killer's reputation in the mind of somebody who only plays Survivor. I would imagine that most survivors that hate the ghoul right now had this happen to them on day one, and they never got over it. And that interaction that they had on day one is still informing their opinion about the ghoul, even though it's less offensive now. It's still not good, by the way. I still think the auto-aim could get reduced even more. Next, ghoul also has obscure text that survivors will get hit with and not understand. The Enraged Vault kidnap hit is a great example of this. It plays off of the ghoul being able to grab a survivor from one side of a pallet or window when the ghoul is further away from the pallet or window and the survivor is right on the other side of it. The ghoul gets a lot of velocity toward that pallet or window, vaulted instantly with the enraged mode, gets a hit. If a survivor doesn't know how this works, they just kind of die. This tech, it kind of needs to go. I don't think it's healthy. The killer is pretty strong without it. The only thing is, really, really good survivor players that can play around this sort of kidnap hit are good enough to just, like, 0 stage the ghoul and 4 out. So, I could say, like, yeah, the ghoul might need something to help him against, like, the very best top of the top 1%, like 0.001% survivor mains. I'm talking, like, Dead by Daylight League survivors. But that's really not a big deal compared to removing this kidnap hit, which is just like a free down every time it happens. Okay, so now that we've gone over a few of the general reasons that killers are hated from the survivor side, and why the ghoul already checks some of those boxes, let's get into the specifics of why the ghoul is so heavily disliked, because there are other factors at play here that are more unique, not general among all killers. There are a few classes of killer in this game that are far more hated than usual, especially so by inexperienced or bad players. Now, what do I mean by this? Because if I'm going to say bad players, I need to actually explain that, right? I'm talking about either players who are very new to Dead by Daylight, and obviously there's no fault in that. Or I'm talking about generally low-skill players who intentionally don't focus on improving themselves. Talking about the type of people who would rather complain about the killer or complain about the survivors first and never stop to wonder what they could have done better. I'm not afraid to call people like that bad, it just is what it is. All you have to do to be good at Dead by Daylight, in my mind, is to put a little bit of thought into improving. It does not matter where you start skill-wise. If you have 5 hours and last 10 seconds in Chase, but you care about getting better, I would rather have you on my team than the 10k hours streamer who won't shut up about how brain dead the killer or the survivors are for one reason or another. Okay, so let's get into this. Bad players hate being injured. They do not want to be injured whatsoever. They want to heal instantly every time they get hit and the killer leaves or they escape a chase. They need to heal. This wastes a lot of time, and this is why the Legion and the Plague are more hated than usual. The Legion is a special case here because this killer sucks. The Legion is like D- tier, bottom 3 killers in the game, but they enjoy a lot of giving up and disconnects, particularly from bad players, because the one thing that the Legion can actually do, and they are good at, is keeping everybody injured all the time. When you have players who can't play injured, don't know how to position themselves safely on the map, and feel like they need to heal every time they're injured, the Legion is going to completely run them over, despite being one of the worst killers in the game. The Plague is also similar, in that she just locks you out of healing indefinitely. Bad players don't like this. They need to be healthy. They feel like they can't exist without being able to give that first hit, because they're not good enough to position themselves in a way that they could make it to a resource or just run shack injured, etc. Bad players love to hold W and not think about where they're going. You drop a pallet, you might be thinking about, okay, where am I going next? A bad player isn't going to think about that. They're going to drop the pallet, and then they are immediately going to hold W away from it and not even look behind them to see if the killer broke the pallet or not. Killers like Blight are designed to counter this holding W playstyle. Blight is obviously an S tier killer, and that also contributes to him being pretty hated, but just not allowing these survivors to have the playstyle of just holding W, forcing them to look behind them and play tiles, that is something that makes Blight more hated than usual. Bad players also don't understand pre-running. The concept of pre-running is that when you hear the terror radius and you sort of have an idea that the killer is coming to you, you need to preemptively put yourself in a situation where you will last longer in chase. Move yourself away from the gen that you're doing, get yourself towards a stronger resource, put distance between you and the killer. And this is extremely important against the stronger killers on the roster, like S tiers and above. When you don't understand this, you end up giving free hits, you end up going down near highly progressed generators, and these are things that hand the killer the win in a match. Bad players also don't understand the importance of line of sight. If the killer can't see you, he can't start a chase with you without an aura perk, of course. And this really comes into play on a killer like Nurse, with whom the most effective way to chase against Nurse is to not get found at all. Knowing the importance of breaking line of sight and stealth is kind of a higher level strategy in Dead by Daylight, because you want to get as much progress on the gen as you can. You don't want to go sit behind a rock and then the killer might not even come. But against the Nurse and against certain other killers, getting found is much, much worse than losing some progress on a generator, because their chase is going to be so fast that it was probably better to lose the progress on the gen than go down in 10 seconds and give the Nurse more pressure. Lastly, bad players don't understand how to have a decent M1 chase and play a tile. When you have a killer that prevents you from holding W at a certain distance, you have to actually have a good understanding of how to play filler pallets, how to play tiles without dropping the pallet, and just general 1v1 knowledge like that. And this is just generally not known among the vast majority of the player base. KANEKI is extremely weak if you have a strong tile that is close enough that you can stop him from using his power. But most people don't know this. They drop the pallet, they hold W away, KANEKI catches up to them instantly, and they die and complain. So, now that we've gotten all of those conditions out of the way, here's the problem with KANEKI. These things that individually cause some killers to be hated in general, KANEKI has all of them at the same time. You can't get found by KANEKI in certain situations. You have to be good at stealth. You have to break line of sight aggressively to understand where you will and won't get hit by the Kagune grab. It is so important if you can make him go into cooldown before the Kagune grab even comes out. We've never had a killer in this game that rolls all of this stuff together at once. KANEKI brutally beats down low-skilled survivors. When you put him against the best survivors in the world, he's still good, but he's very escapable. You need so much complicated survivor knowledge to escape against the ghoul. You have to pre-run him, or else you'll get injured near a progressed gen, and he'll just catch up to you instantly and kill you. You have to get found in a strong area with good windows and pallets, not a dead zone. If KANEKI finds you in a dead zone, you simply die. This means that you actually have to have knowledge of maps and how they generate, how strong one area is over another. And this is tough information that most Dead by Daylight players just don't know. You have to actually attempt to dodge the first Kagune grab. That's actually not, it's not impossible. Most of the time it's going to hit you and it's going to feel like BS, but it is not impossible. And it's actually really impactful on your chase if you do manage to dodge it. You have to be comfortable playing injured, because at a certain point, he can injure people so fast that it's not always worth healing against him because of how free that grab hitbox can be. And you can't hold W against KANEKI. You have to be confident playing tiles, you have to generally know check spots and be confident in your 1v1s. When you play those tiles, you need to actually know the Kagune animation to watch out for when the ghoul is trying to do a grab vault on you and change your pathing accordingly, because that can kill you too. You have to predict the movement of his Kagune leaps and situationally double back to make KANEKI overslide and go past you. Did you get all that? Think you can do all of that at the same time? This is why the average survivor is quitting against the ghoul. 90+% of survivors can't even do one of those things. The ghoul is a top 5 or 6 killer. who combines a specific set of traits which kick bad players while they're down. Thank you for coming to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and open to any comments or questions you may have. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed.